Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and I am on Borrow My Kitchen. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about cookie recipes that you can bring for picnics, social gatherings, or greeting new neighbors. I picked a white chocolate macadamia nut cherry cookie. Cherries are in season in Colorado right now, so I wanted to keep something local and delicious. Pro warning, we did do some prep before this. I'll go through what we did to make this as seamless as possible. This is an entry-level baking recipe, but there is some kind of nuance if you want to make it a little more tricky or advanced. I also deviated from the recipe, which Brad will include during this video. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and we'll get back to you shortly. So I am a marketing manager at a local social media agency. So basically I tweet for a living. If you want to find me on Instagram, my handle is Sarah Yaffe. That's Y-A-F-F-E. I mostly post about my plants and my dog and the occasional food recipe. If you do follow me, you saw it last week, I made a 10-pound chocolate cake. This recipe will not take that long and is a lot less high strung. This is easy peasy. Definitely we can walk through it together. So this recipe is so delicious. It's nutty, it's light, and it just, to me, kind of tastes like Christmas, which is fun to do in the middle of summer when you're hot and sweaty and you want just something to kind of cool down. These cookies will last for about 6 weeks. They're pretty hearty. You're welcome to keep them in the fridge or just on the counter. But I think you're gonna be excited. And, thanks for watching. So let's get started. All right, so this recipe has a handful of ingredients. Recommend having 1 to 1.5 sticks of salted butter at room temperature, 1 cup of light brown sugar. We're gonna need 1 cup of granulated sugar. Be very careful about what types of sugar. A powdered sugar is delicious, but it will not make you cookies. You'll need 2 large eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This can be substituted for almond extract or any other flavor you'd like to see. We're gonna need 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which is how the cookies rise. We'll need 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of milk, 1 cup of chopped macadamia nuts. That's definitely something you can do more or less of. 1/2 cup of cherries. You can do, as I mentioned, candied, fresh. Just make sure that they're dry and frozen. And then the best part is the 1/1/2 cup of white chocolate chips. If you absolutely don't like white chocolate because you don't enjoy good flavor, you can use milk chocolate. Vanilla extract is one of the ingredients. Easy, simple. You will need butter. We recommend doing salted. And before you start this recipe, put the butter outside so it can get to room temperature for easy whipping. Milk, eggs, white chocolate chips, baking soda, cane sugar, brown sugar. We will need both types of sugar in this recipe today. Flour. Higher elevation, you might want to use an enriched Hungarian high elevation flour, but for this, we can use just normal flour. Pre-chopped macadamia nuts, pre-cut cherries. We recommend putting these in the freezer for 20 minutes to an hour so that they don't bleed into the white cookies. And we recommend cutting them about the size of the macadamia nuts. I recommend setting yourself up for success and having a whole bunch of little bowls for your ingredients. We're gonna predominantly use this for our wet and this for our dry. If you like to stay organized, use as much counter space as you need. People might tell you, try to stay clean while cooking. More mess, more flavor. This recipe doesn't require a stand mixer or a handheld mixer. You can absolutely use your hand, a strong whisk, but for sake of easiness, we're gonna go ahead and use this easy mixer, which will just make things go a little quicker and make everything blended even better. Great. So a pro tip I recommend with this recipe is freezing your cherries overnight. We are going to pit them first and then just pop them in the freezer so that they're at a good cool temperature to prevent bleeding in the cookies. So while I am cutting these, be careful. I recommend using a paring knife. We only need about 1.5 cups of the cherries. If you like more of a fruitful flavor, or if you are changing up it a bit, go ahead and do a full cup. Another reason I grabbed cherries today is it's cherry season. So I always recommend grabbing things that are fresh, something that's gonna, taste good in season, that's actually just kind of healthy. Well, if this gets onto the filming, I met Brad like 3 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, maybe even longer than that. So if you don't know, Brad is the mastermind behind this. I met him through his sister, who was friends with my mom's ex-boyfriend. But it came out to be a great thing because I love Brad, I love his family. Jen, if you ever see us in post-editing, you're gorgeous. Here's a great idea. If you're gonna be using fresh cherries, please wear gloves, otherwise you will be getting red stains for days. If, true chefs don't care, but 100% it's gonna look like this. I like to use all the cherry, so if you notice I haven't cut them all yet, I'll come back to those later after I get the bulk. I'm also gonna cut these into smaller pieces so that the cookie isn't a giant bite of cherry. If you're gonna be using fresh produce, try to find somewhere to compost. This is a great opportunity to, not throw things in the landfill. If you aren't sure where to start, tons of elementary schools nearby or public gardens take food waste from households all throughout the year. And if you want to start a compost at your own home, I recommend starting with a small bin. I know that the city of Denver, which is where I live, you pay like $15 a month and they'll bring you a bin and then pick it up, which is really helpful if you are a solo person or a small family. If you are doing this off season or if it's the winter and you're not sure where to get fresh cherries, you can definitely use candied. This will prevent the entire cutting, freezing process, but it might not be as fresh and it will definitely have more added sugar. This is, obviously natural sugar. It's gonna go really nice with the rest of our ingredients, but completely a choice when you make the recipe at home. Which, if you haven't and you do make this at home, please comment and drop photos in. If you have any recommendations, I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of people saying I'm a horrible chopper. I know, I did not go to cooking school or I'm a home cook, but do share your pro tips. Let's build a community around Borrow My Kitchen. So we're gonna be using macadamia nuts as well today. Macadamia nuts are one of the healthiest nuts. If you have an allergy, I recommend substituting pistachios, which actually goes so well with cherry. That flavor to me is Christmas. Or if you're Jewish, think of like a nice Purim flavor as well. All right, so we're gonna chop up the next thing. If you're okay with having cookies with these big nuts, no prep required. I am fussy, so I want these to be half the size that this package came in, so the cookie's a little easier to chew.
So when did you first have these cookies?
This is my first time.
Oh, it's really your first time making them? You've never had these before?
So, I like to play things a little fast and easy. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to share with everyone today. There's so many different recipes from my childhood, but I kind of thought that it's fun to create something on the spot and learn about yourself. So I picked a recipe that I thought I could handle and share with the world. And I also, as I mentioned before, I really want to make sure that, it's in season. And because cherries in Colorado are so gorgeous, it's the time. All right, so let's get started. Step 1, we're going to turn on the oven to 375 degrees and we're going to grease our cooking pans. So the beautiful thing about home cooking is it's a never guaranteed amount of cookies. So although I think that I'm going to make 12, I might make 15 and I might make 8 cookies depending on how big they become. So grab 2 baking sheets. Feel free to use parchment paper, aluminum oil, then with the spray of canola or another kind of spray. All right, we are going to start with our wet ingredients. So I recommend using your large bowl because this is where everything's gonna end up. We're gonna start with creaming the butter, adding in the sugar, and making things really nice and fluffy. So if you want a more rich, fluffy cookie, use only a stick. If you want something a little thinner, go ahead and put in a stick and a half. I think it was Julia Child who said that everything's made better with butter. She's not wrong. So, as I mentioned, I'm gonna use a stick and a half. I like to sometimes deviate from recipes. Again, home cooking is about exploring, trying new things, and rarely is something going to alter the recipe so that it's disgusting. What is disgusting was me trying to do that without a knife. That was my bad. So I'm gonna continue to cream this. All right, we are now going to add both of our sugars. 1 cup of brown sugar. I truly think a messier kitchen, the more fun the process. All right, I'm adding brown sugar, and now I'm gonna be adding the cane sugar, and then I'm gonna cream everything together. It'll start to look kind of more like a cookie thing. Right now, this looks nothing like the final product. All right, let's add some white sugar. This obviously can be substituted for any sugar substitute if you are diabetic. All right, let's mix this together. I would recommend blending it until it has this kind of crumbly texture. This recipe is going to be very, very thick. So definitely if you have a runny mixture, add in more flour or more ingredients like the cherry and macadamia nuts. So real quick, I'm gonna add in the eggs and the vanilla so we can kind of start getting some of that flavor together. And again, it'll be a very similar process. Wait until the texture looks about the same. All right, I need 2 large eggs. So this is the wet bowl, even though it had the sugars, because how sugar works, it's just gonna get absorbed into the wet ingredients. We'll be adding the actual flour and nuts more towards the end. Next, we need 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. So once I find that, all right, we can put those to the side and start blending again. This is what this looks like so far. It's nice and creamy before we add in all of our heavy, dry ingredients. In another bowl, I am going to grab my dry ingredients. All right, we need 3 cups of flour for this recipe. If I know how to open things. I'm an expert on baking, not opening, or very basic life skills. Where'd the cup go? All right. This is a heaping one. Might have underestimated what size bowl to use. Definitely, again, if you make a mess, you can always clean up later. All right, flour is added. What else do we need? Sure, that's cute. They're like, don't you know? Baking soda and salt, let's do this. All right, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. If someone can comment a better way to get baking soda out of the box into a measuring spoon, that is a tip I would like to know. We'll call that 1. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna mix my dry ingredients together. And you know, it's a good thing to always second guess yourself and remember that to look at your recipe. So I forgot salt. So I'm gonna add that now before I add it to the wet ingredients. You can put this into a measuring cup. I'm just gonna give it a few grinds if I can figure out how to use Brad's thing. This? Now yeah, I guess this is it. Wow. We're gonna call that good. All right. This is what everything looks like sifted together. We're now gonna add this pretty slowly to here to make it consistent. I like to do it in thirds to ensure that you don't overload the recipe. I think my mom once said you should clean up while you cook. I never learned that lesson. So this is what it looks like with 2/3 of the flour. I'm noticing that it's getting really stiff. So before I finish adding the flour, I'm gonna add in my milk a little early so that it's easier to blend. All right.
Also, I totally have a baking soda tip for you.
What's the baking tip?
So you put the spoon in upside down in the box.
Yeah.
And scoop it out and pull it out.
Scoop it out. Scoop method. Wouldn't that have been helpful a few minutes ago? All right, we're gonna put in 2 tablespoons of milk. I personally might end up putting up more, just like I just did. Clearly, I should have poured a little slower. Pro tip, don't use a brand new thing of milk. I'm gonna blend that milk in and then add the rest of my flour. All right, let's do the rest of the flour. So I would recommend before kind of being done blending is make sure you have all the sides. This is a pretty sticky batter. If you feel like it's too sticky or that you can't even make a cube, add a little extra flour, kind of like when you're making bread. But it is a nice, pretty stiff texture. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little taste, make sure that we're on the right flavors. Pretty good so far. Yeah, it's pretty good. Cool. So next step is we're gonna mix our macadamia nuts and our cherries together. So I'm gonna very slowly fold these into the batter. So again, kind of that slow process so that nothing gets crushed. So these are our frozen cherries. It's just so that it bleeds as little as possible. The last ingredient we'll be doing is the white chocolate chips, which if you elect to avoid, you just have like this nice healthy cookie bar. But the white chocolate chips add a really nice sweetness. This is what your batter should look like. All right, we need 1/2 cup of chocolate chips. You're welcome to add more or less depending on how sweet you want them. I'm a huge fan of white chocolate chips, so I'm gonna do a lot. And again, fold them in. This is mostly to prevent the cherries from bleeding. All right, so this is what our batter looks like. It looks like it's a little less because Brad and I had a few spoonfuls. There's 2 ways to put this on the cookie sheet. You can either use your hands, the most classic way, about this size. You could do a marble or larger. I recommend spacing them pretty well because they will expand. These are pretty flat cookies. Pro tip, if you have an ice cream scoop, that is the quickest and easiest way to get these cookies in and out. I'm gonna do this by hand because I think that it's a kind of a fun thing to do. And part of the reason I love cooking is honestly like that feeling of doing something with your hands. So I lied when I said it was gonna be H-Tall cookies. This is easily a 20 to 24 baked cookie. I still have this much dough left. Borrow My Kitchen only has 2 cooking sheets. So we're gonna have to do a 3rd sheet after these are done. But we're gonna pop these in the oven at 375 degrees. I am quite messy, as you see. And I'm gonna go ahead and bake that for about 13, maybe 15 minutes, but I like to check on them at about 11. So while those are baking, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this mess I made, and we'll meet back for the 3rd round of cooking sheets. All right, let's see if they're done. All right, so just to confirm that they're the right level of crunchy and gooey, I'm gonna use a toothpick and just see if it comes back clean. Looks like we're pretty good. If you like crispier cookies, feel free to leave them in a little longer. I like my cookies extra moist. All right, so as soon as you get these out of the oven, you're gonna wanna plate them somewhere cool so the bottoms don't get too brown. I like to use a cooking tray, but you could absolutely use the back of a cool plate or another baking tray. This one came out really pretty. I definitely made these cookies Sharon size for me, myself, and I. And I'm fired from the cooking show. Brad's like, she's corny, this girl ain't coming back. So those will be cool in a few minutes, and then I'll dive in. All right, the cookies are done. They look beautiful, perfect for sharing. So let me give it a try. They're still a little warm and gooey. Really good. Not to toot my own horn. This has been Borrow My Kitchen. Leave comments and share photos once you've made it. And please subscribe to our channel. Have a great day.